Hi everybody, I miss you. Here's the note catcher that you need for today's read aloud. Hopefully you've got your pencils ready. All right, and we're going to start off today with a review. So I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. Hopefully you have an adult near you who can kind of check in and make sure you're answering the questions correctly, okay? So my first question is, why did people from Europe want to travel to the Indies? What did they want to get from the Indies? Why would they all want to go there? Think about people like Giovanni and Sophia and Christopher Columbus. Okay, and then why couldn't they get there by riding on the backs of animals or by walking? Something happened that made it so that they couldn't get there by land. Okay, and so remember that a lot of European navigators suggested sailing by ship around Africa to get to the Indies. Okay, this was the most popular idea, but Christopher Columbus, he had a different idea than most navigators. He had a different plan of how to get there. What was it? That's a hard one. Okay, and then who were the richest people back then? Who were the people who had enough money that they could possibly give it to explorers like Columbus so that they could take long trips like this? All right, so we learned yesterday that even though Columbus now had the support of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, his idea of how he was going to get to the Indies was very difficult for anybody to believe. It was shocking for some people. It was so shocking that it would be like us today trying to believe that daytime is dark and nighttime is bright and sunny. It didn't make sense to people. Listen carefully to find out how the journey into the unknown had turned out. Okay? Here we go. The title of this read aloud is 1492. The year was 1492. King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, as the rulers of Spain, provided Christopher Columbus with 3 ships. They gave him money to pay their crews to sail them, plus food and water for the long voyage. Columbus was to sail his fleet westward to the Indies. There he would trade European goods for rare spices, gold, and other treasures that the king and queen desired. Okay, so Columbus and his crew, the sailors who sailed the 3 ships, would take some supplies that were made in Europe so that they could trade it for things like spices or gold. Okay, and my first question I want to check in with you, hopefully you remember, is what year is it? It's kind of an important year for you to remember. What year was it? If you forgot, maybe you could rewind the video and check. Okay? All right, I'm about to tell you about Columbus's ships. See if you can remember the names of them. Columbus's 3 ships had names: the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. Say it. Nina, Pinta, Santa Maria. Can you find the smallest ship in this picture? That is the Nina. The middle-sized one is the Pinta, and it was the fastest of the 3. But Columbus chose to sail on the largest ship, the 120-foot-long Santa Maria, or St. Mary. Proud of all 3 vessels and wanting his voyage to succeed, he was determined to choose the best sailors that he could find in all of Spain. All right, let's see if you remember. What was the name of the 3 ships? If you forgot, rewind and try to remember them in your brain. And then which was the one that Columbus sailed on? Columbus was confident that he could attract the men he needed and convince them to go on the voyage. True, he had to paint word pictures of warm, beautiful lands where gold and rare spices were so common that a person could hardly avoid tripping over them. He suggested, without actually promising, that his crew would return to Spain so rich that they could all live in grand homes and wear fine clothes. Another thing he told them was quite true. Queen Isabella had offered a huge cash reward, or a lot of money, to the first person who sighted the Indies. Perhaps it was this offer that was most convincing of all the sailors. One by one, Columbus found his men, and they agreed to join his expedition. An expedition is a group of people on a journey for a special reason. So, what convinced all these people to go on this long journey? They knew it was dangerous, but why did they decide to go anyway? Talk to someone in your family about it. Okay. At last, everyone and everything was ready. On August 3rd, 1492, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria sailed out of their Spanish harbor, bound for a possible fortune in the Indies. The sailors were proud and excited. But when they passed the last familiar lands, the Canary Islands, they found themselves in open sea, out of sight of any land, and their excitement began to turn to uncertainty, and then to fear. Columbus tried to calm their fears. Okay, so imagine you're on one of these ships for days and days and days, and you're so far out into the water that you can't see any land anymore. Think about how you would feel. Both Columbus and the crew were feeling less safe the longer they sailed in the open sea. As days passed and then weeks, Columbus's reassurance was no longer enough to keep the crew from becoming seriously frightened or scared. What do you think they're scared of? Why are they afraid? Either say it out loud or tell someone near you. Days and days and long nights passed. The Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria had been sailing westward out at sea for weeks now. They had entered a part of the ocean in which long, thick seaweed covered the surface in every direction for as far as the eye could see. This is a good sign, Columbus thought. It may mean that we're nearing land. Have you ever seen seaweed at the beach? It's like a long green plant that grows in the ocean. But then the winds died down to nearly nothing, and the sails hung lifelessly from the masts. The three ships crept forward, and sometimes they stopped moving altogether. Each day was like the one before, and Columbus and the sailors wondered, will we ever get out of the seaweed? Will the wind ever change and come back to us? So, again, talk to someone around you, or say it out loud. Why do the sailors need the wind to come back? Why do they want the wind to come back? At last, after days and days, the wind picked up again, and they sailed free of the clinging seaweed and back into the open sea. Still, the sailors worried, and they no longer bothered to hide their doubts from Columbus. When will we find the land that you promised us? They asked. Soon, he told them, trying to look confident. Soon we will get there. But as he said this, Columbus too had his own doubts. All right, so we got our first question. After sailing for weeks, the ship started to slow down. Why? So you could say the ship slowed down because, or they slowed down because, blank. Pause the video if you need to. But the sailors were tired of sailing and were losing hope. They came to Columbus one day and begged him to turn the ships around. Just give me 3 more days, he said. If we have not seen land by then, we will turn around. But the days passed with no sign of progress. Then on the 3rd day, a sailor called out, There's something floating in the water up ahead. Fish it up out of the water, Columbus ordered. Some sailors tossed a net over the side and drew up the object. It's a stick, cried one of the sailors. It looks as if someone has carved it on the side of it with a knife. That must mean there's land ahead and someone is living there, the other said excitedly. Okay, so here's the stick, and it said someone had carved something into it. Why do you think that's a sign of land? Why are they excited? Why do they think that land might be coming? Say it out loud or talk to someone near you. The next day, several sailors saw branches with green leaves floating on the surface of the water. Okay, so here's another sign that they're coming to land. Then the crews of all 3 ships saw a large flock of land birds flying overhead, another clue that they're close to land. We must be getting close to land, the men cried with great excitement. Okay, so think about it. I'm kind of making a list in my head. There's these clues or hints that finally, they're getting closer to land. Hopefully you can remember them. If you're forgetting them, maybe rewind and listen to it again. Because your next question, one of your next questions coming up is going to ask you about these signs of land. The birds circled above as if examining the 3 ships, then turned back in the direction from which they had come. Follow them, Columbus ordered. The birds will lead us to land. Soon the salty sea breezes began to carry a new scent their way. Could we be smelling the spices of Asia up ahead? The sailors asked one another, growing more and more excited. But still they saw no land. On the evening of Thursday, October 11th, Columbus ordered the ships to drop anchor, something they had not done the entire voyage. An anchor is like a very heavy metal object that can keep the ship from moving. So they dropped it into the water and it was connected to the ship so the ship wouldn't move. If we're really close to land, he thought, we might be carried by the current up against the shore in the darkness and never know until it's too late. So at this point, Columbus ordered everybody or each ship to drop an anchor into the water. Why did he do that? This is another one. You don't have to write it down. Just think about it. Why did they drop anchor? That night, walking to the deck of the Santa Maria, he saw a light in the distance. It is too far away to be coming from the Pinta, he thought, knowing that the ship was anchored farther ahead of his own. And that light is too low in the sky to be a star. It must be a fire set by a human being up on the shore ahead. Okay, so the shore is the land on the edge of the water. And how do you think Columbus will feel when they finally get to shore? Think about that. A few hours later, in the early morning hours of October 12, 1492, Columbus heard the sound of a cannon. It is coming from the Pinta, he thought. They must have sighted land. A cannon is a weapon that fires large metal balls at enemies and makes a loud noise when it's fired. Why do you think the Pinta shot a cannon? Waiting impatiently as the early light of dawn increased, he stared ahead until he saw what the sailors on board the Pinta had seen, a long, low shore on which the ocean waves were smoothly breaking. The men of the Pinta were cheering, and moments later cheering broke out aboard the Nina and the Santa Maria too. Okay, so finally something happened on October 12th, 1492. What happened? Say it out loud. Tell your family members what finally happened on this day that all the crew is so excited about. And then let's answer our next question. It says, what 5 signs did they see that made them think that they were getting close to land? Okay. What were some of the clues that told them that they were getting close to land finally? Dressing formally or nicely for the occasion and carrying a long flagpole bearing the flag of Spain, Columbus and some of his men rowed over the waves in a small boat to the shore of his new land. Stepping out into the water, Columbus and the sailors stepped ashore, and by his calculations, Columbus believed he had landed on the continent of Asia in the Indies. Okay, so where does he think he is? He thinks he's in the... Then he plunged the flagpole into the sandy shore and said, on behalf of their majesties, I, Christopher Columbus, claim this land and all it is for the land of Spain. Okay, so he took a big flag and he stuck it down into the ground, as you can see in the picture, and he said, this is the land for Spain. Okay, but your last question says, where did Columbus think he landed? So you're going to say he thinks he landed and then put down where. Okay. Finish that up. Pause the video if you need to. Here's one more question that for you to just think about. You don't need to say it or you don't need to write it down. When Columbus landed and he thought he was in the Indies, he took out the Spanish flag and he stuffed it down into the sand. He stuck it in the sand. Why did he do that? Why did he put down the flag of Spain? And what did Columbus hope to bring back to Spain from the Indies? What did he want to bring back to Spain from the Indies? Okay. You have a journal prompt to work on after this. It's going to ask you if Columbus had asked you to go on the journey with him, would you have done it? And why or why not? That's what you're going to write about today. Okay. Thanks for sticking with me in these tough lessons, and I hope you're learning a lot. Bye, guys.